The Midnight Veil materialized in the heart of the Concordette's capital system, like a shadow taking form. No hyperspace distortion, no quantum wake. It simply appeared. Within seconds, the sector's threat assessment systems registered its presence. A vessel of unknown configuration, stretching nearly 3 kilometers from bow to stern, its hull seeming to drink in the light of the system's twin suns. Admiral Sarah Chen watched the alien traffic scatter from her ship's bridge, a ghost of a smile playing at the corners of her mouth. The Concordette's mighty defense fleet, pride of 6 spacefaring species, was about to learn that humanity's apparent technological infancy had been the greatest deception in galactic history. Multiple vessels moving to intercept. Admiral, Lieutenant Rivera reported from his tactical station. Counting 37 capital ships. Their weapons are powered but inactive. They appear confused. I imagine they are, Chen replied, straightening her midnight blue uniform. Broadcast on all frequencies. First contact protocol Omega. Let's introduce ourselves properly. The message that streamed out across the void was deceptively simple, a greeting in the Concordette's standard trade language, followed by credentials that would send the alien bureaucracy into chaos. Credentials that proved humanity had possessed observers in their highest councils for decades. High Administrator Xentil of the Concordette nearly dropped his crystalline form when the authentication code scrolled across his private terminal. Codes that could only have come from the secure databases within his own office. Impossible, he whispered, his crystalline body flickering with patterns of distress. Call an emergency session. Now. The great council chamber of the Concordette filled quickly, representatives of 24 spacefaring races taking their seats in the tiered amphitheater. The holographic projection of the Midnight Veil hung above them like a promise or a threat. Admiral Chen's image materialized in the center of the chamber. She stood tall, hands clasped behind her back, the simple elegance of her uniform a stark contrast to the ornate diplomatic garb of the council members. Honorable representatives, she began, her voice carrying easily through the vast space. For 50 years, you have known humanity as a primitive species, barely capable of interstellar flight. You have watched our fumbling attempts at fusion drives, our clumsy first steps into FTL travel. You have dismissed us as children, centuries away from true spacefaring capability. She paused, letting the weight of the moment settle. That was exactly what we wanted you to believe. The chamber erupted in a cascade of voices and electromagnetic pulses of agitation. Chen waited patiently for the chaos to subside. While you monitored our public space programs, our real advancement continued in secret, deep beneath our oceans, in hollowed-out asteroids, in pocket dimensions we learned to create. Every failed experiment you observed was cover for a dozen successes. Every primitive prototype we revealed masked a technological leap you never suspected. High Administrator Xentil's crystalline form pulsed with angry light. This is an outrage, a violation of what? Chen interrupted smoothly. We violated no treaties, broke no laws. We simply allowed you to underestimate us. And now we come with a warning. The chamber grew still. Humanity has detected something approaching from the galactic core, something that threatens not just us, but every species in this chamber. We could have remained hidden, protected ourselves alone. Instead, we chose to reveal ourselves, to offer our technology and knowledge in the defense of all sentient life. She gestured, and new holograms appeared, dark shapes moving between the stars, defying analysis, corrupting the very space around them. You have one standard rotation to decide, Chen continued. Join us as equals in facing this threat, or we will withdraw and prepare our defenses alone. The choice is yours. Her image vanished, leaving the council chamber in stunned silence. In her cabin aboard the Midnight Veil, Admiral Chen removed her uniform jacket and poured herself a measure of real Earth whiskey. The first move had been made. Now everything would change. The truth was, humanity needed the Concordette's help as much as they needed humanity's advanced technology. The horrors approaching from the galactic core would require every species working together to survive. But sometimes, Chen reflected, a little deception was necessary to forge the strongest alliances. She raised her glass to the distant Earth, invisible from this far out, but always in her thoughts. "The game begins," she whispered to herself, and took a sip of whiskey as reports of chaos throughout Concordat space began flooding in. The holographic display in the Concordat's Grand Assembly Hall showed nothing but static, which was precisely what made it terrifying. These were humanity's most advanced sensors, technology that could peer into dimensions the Concordat scientists hadn't even theorized existed, and they were being overwhelmed by something. Dr. Maya Patel stood before the assembled representatives of 24 spacefaring species, her dark eyes reflecting the chaos of the display above. Unlike Admiral Chen's dramatic revelation 3 days ago, this presentation had been requested by the Concordat themselves. Fear, it seemed, was an excellent motivator for scientific cooperation. What you're seeing, or rather, not seeing, is a region of space approximately 20,000 light-years from the galactic core, Maya explained. Her voice steadied, despite the gravity of the situation. 3 months ago, our deep space monitoring stations detected an anomaly. Stars were going dark, but not in any way we'd observed before. They weren't dying. They were being consumed. The Arthenian representative, a being of living metal and crystalline thought matrices, raised a appendage. Consumed how exactly? Even a black hole leaves observable effects. Maya nodded, appreciating the scientific precision of the question. That's what makes this situation unprecedented. These stars aren't being drawn in by gravity or destroyed by conventional means. They're being systematically broken down at the quantum level, their basic structure being repurposed. She gestured, and the static resolved into a time-lapse recording. The assembly hall filled with gasps and electromagnetic pulses of shock as they watched a yellow dwarf star, not unlike Earth's sun, seemingly dissolve into threads of energy that were drawn away by something that hurt the eyes to look at. "We call them the entropy weavers," Maya continued, "not because we know what they are, but because we needed a name for the reports. They're moving through the galaxy in a pattern we've only recently decoded, consuming stellar matter and converting it into this." The display shifted again, showing writhing structures that seemed to exist in more dimensions than space should allow. Several representatives had to look away, their sensory organs unable to process the geometries involved. High Administrator Xental's crystalline form had taken on a pale, sickly hue. "If what you're showing us is accurate." "It is," Maya interrupted. "Every measurement has been verified by multiple independent systems. We're dealing with entities that can reshape the fundamental forces of reality, and they're headed toward populated space." "Why should we trust this data?" demanded the Krex ambassador, his scaled hide flushing with skepticism. "Humanity has already proven itself capable of elaborate deception." Maya smiled grimly. "Because we've been fighting them already. Quietly. Secretly. Remember the Helios sector? The official reports called it a natural phenomenon, a cascade of stellar deaths that forced the evacuation of 3 colony systems. The chamber grew very quiet. That was us," Maya continued. "A task force of human ships engaging a scout group of entropy weavers. We won, barely, lost 2 vessels, and barely prevented a rupture in space-time that would have consumed half the sector. But it was just a scout group. Our models suggest the main body of their migration will reach populated space within 6 standard months." She brought up new displays, tactical projections, defensive scenarios, evacuation protocols. "We need the Concordat's help. Yes, humanity has advanced technology, but we also have limitations. The Arthenians' living metal could be crucial for developing adaptive armor. Krex phase shift drives might help us track the weavers through dimensional space. The Xi collective consciousness could process tactical data faster than any computer." "And what do we receive in return?" The question came from an unexpected source. A junior representative of the Meridian cluster, Speaking out of turn. Survival. Maya answered simply. We estimate that fighting the Weavers separately gives each of our civilizations a survival probability of less than 2%. Together, the models suggest we might have a fighting chance, but only if we act now. She gestured one final time, and the display showed a new image. A massive vessel under construction in orbit around Jupiter. This is the Prometheus project. It's either our salvation or our last resort, depending on how the next few months play out. We've already begun construction, but with the Concordat's resources and expertise, we could have it ready before the Weavers arrive in force. The assembly hall erupted in discussion, representatives forming quick alliances and arguing strategic priorities. Maya watched them with a mixture of hope and anxiety. Humanity had gambled everything on this moment, revealing not only their technological advancement, but also the existential threat facing the galaxy. In her earpiece, Admiral Chen's voice came through on a quantum-encrypted channel. Well done, Dr. Puddle. How do you think they're taking it? Maya glanced around the chamber, noting the patterns of alliance and resistance already forming. They're scared, Sarah, and scared people either run away or band together. Let's hope they choose the latter. They'll choose survival, Chen replied confidently. They just don't know it yet. As if to punctuate her words, another stellar death appeared on the long-range sensors, a point of light going dark in humanity's most distant detection grid. The entropy weavers were coming, and time was running out. Captain Elena Santos stood in the massive integration bay of the Jupiter shipyards, watching teams of humans and aliens working together on the massive form of the Prometheus. The vessel's quantum crystalline hull stretched for kilometers, its surface rippling with patterns of light as Arthenian engineers merged their living metal with human phase tech. Fascinating implementation of multi-dimensional geometry, hummed third mind of many, the Xi collective consciousness floating beside her in its containment field. The being's thoughts manifested as shifting colors in the mist-like form. Though we calculate a 3.4% chance of catastrophic resonance cascade in the current configuration. Elena smiled. 2 months ago, the idea of different species working together like this would have seemed impossible. Fear of extinction, it turned out, was an excellent motivator for cooperation. Good catch. What if we adjusted the quantum harmonics to match your species' neural patterns? Your collective consciousness could help stabilize the field. The Xi's colors shifted to pleased purple. Probability of success increases to 94.7%. We will begin modifications immediately. Above them, a Krex engineering team was testing their phase shift technology on a section of the hull, their scaled forms moving with precise efficiency. The sight of the traditionally isolationist species working alongside others was still surprising, even after weeks of collaboration. Captain Santos, a crystalline voice chimed. Elena turned to find High Administrator Xentil approaching, his form refracting the work lights. Your engineers have integrated our stellar manipulation arrays successfully. I must admit, we underestimated humanity's adaptive capabilities. That was the point, Elena replied diplomatically. Though I sometimes wonder if we took the deception too far. We could have been working together all along. The crystal being's form flickered with what Elena had learned to recognize as thoughtful patterns. Perhaps. But would we have listened? Sometimes wisdom requires the right moment to be heard. Their conversation was interrupted by a priority alert. Elena's neural implant connected directly to the shipyard systems, flooding her consciousness with data. New readings from the deep space array. The entropy weavers have accelerated their advance. We've lost contact with 3 more monitoring stations. Xentil's form pulsed with alarm patterns. How long? 4 months until they reach populated space. Maybe less. Elena's mind was already racing through calculations, project timelines, resource allocations. We need to step up production. The Prometheus has to be ready. The next 12 hours were a blur of activity. Elena moved through the shipyards, coordinating teams, solving integration problems, pushing the impossible project forward. She watched as Arthenian living metal adapted to how Xi consciousness cores, as Krek's phase shift drives were modified with human quantum technology, as theories that had existed only in simulation became reality through the combined efforts of multiple species. In her private moments, Alina marveled at how quickly the alliance had formed, once the initial shock and suspicion had worn off. Each species brought unique perspectives and capabilities to the project. The Xi's collective consciousness could process vast amounts of data and run complex simulations. The Arthenians' living metal could adapt and evolve to meet new challenges. The Krek's understanding of phase space proved invaluable in tracking and predicting the Weaver's movements. And humanity. Humanity brought something less tangible, but equally crucial. The ability to innovate, to take disparate pieces and forge them into something new. Where other species excelled in their specialties, humans had a knack for seeing unexpected connections and possibilities. Status report. Admiral Chen's hologram appeared in Alina's office as she was reviewing the day's progress. We're ahead of schedule on hull integration, Alina reported, pulling up detailed projections. The Xi consciousness cores are stabilizing the quantum fields better than we hoped. But we're having trouble with the main weapon system. Converting stellar matter into usable energy is proving complicated. Chen's hologram nodded. That's why I'm authorizing the release of Project Prometheus's true specifications. Show them everything. Alina's eyes widened. Everything. But that's a calculated risk, Chen finished. But we're past the point of holding back. The Concordat species need to understand exactly what we're building, what it's going to take to stop the Weavers. Later that day, Alina stood before the combined scientific council of the Alliance. Behind her, detailed holographic schematics of the Prometheus filled the air. She took a deep breath, knowing that what she was about to reveal would change everything again. What you're looking at isn't just a weapon, she began. The Prometheus isn't designed to just fight the entropy Weavers. It's designed to match them, to beat them at their own game. We're building a ship that can reshape reality itself. The chamber erupted in shocked discussion, but Alina pressed on. The time for half-truths was over. Now they needed to face the full scope of what they were attempting, and what it would cost them all. Unity had gotten them this far, but to survive what was coming, they would need something more, the courage to transcend the very laws of physics themselves. The void between stars erupted with impossible geometries as the first wave of entropy Weavers tore through the fabric of normal space. Reality itself seemed to protest their presence, space-time writhing and distorting around their forms. They'd moved like living fractals, each motion multiplied across dimensions that shouldn't exist. Aboard the Prometheus, Admiral Chen watched the sensor feeds with growing tension. The massive ship hummed with power, its hybrid systems representing the combined technological might of 6 spacefaring civilizations. Behind her, the bridge crew, human and alien alike, worked with practiced efficiency. Multiple breaches detected, reported Kevin, the Krek's sensor officer. They're using some kind of dimensional shearing effect we haven't seen before. Our phase tracking is having trouble maintaining lock. Xi consciousness core compensating, chimed the collective voice of the ship's integrated Xi presence, adjusting sensor algorithms in real time. Tracking restored to 89% efficiency. Chen nodded, watching as the tactical display updated with new information. The Weavers were appearing in greater numbers than their models had predicted. Status of the defense fleet. Concordat heavy elements are in position, Alina Santos reported from her tactical station. Arthenian living metal ships are adapting to the dimensional distortions. Human stealth vessels are maintaining their holding pattern. We're as ready as we'll ever be. The Admiral took a deep breath. Humanity had spent decades preparing for this moment, and the last 3 months had been a desperate race to prepare their allies. Now they would see if it was enough. All ships, execute Battle Plan Theta, Chen ordered. Remember your training. We didn't come this far to fail now. The combined fleet moved with coordinated precision. Arthenian vessels led the charge, their living metal hulls morphing to counter the Weaver's reality warping effects. Krek's ships phased in and out of normal space, their advanced drives allowing them to match the enemy's dimensional shifts. Human vessels struck from stealth, their quantum weapons disrupting the Weaver's impossible geometries. For a moment, it seemed to be working. The first wave of Weavers faltered, their assault disrupted by the coordinated defense. But then, new signatures detected. Cave-end scales flushed with alarm. They're converting our weapons fire into usable energy. They're learning, adapting. Chen watched in horror as the Weavers began to twist the very attacks against them into more impossible shapes. A Concordat dreadnought vanished in a burst of recursive geometry. 3 Arthenian ships merged into a singular mass of writhing metal as their adaptive capabilities were turned against them. Fall back to secondary positions, Chen ordered. All ships, emergency protocols are now in effect. She turned to Elena. Status of the main weapon. Power systems are charging, Elena reported, her fingers dancing across her console. But the stellar matter converter is showing signs of instability. If we try to fire at full power, we might tear ourselves apart, Chen finished. Status of the Xi consciousness core. The mist-like presence that permeated the bridge pulsed with concerned colors. We are maintaining cohesion, but the dimensional stress is approaching critical levels. The Weaver's presence is affecting our ability to process reality in a linear fashion. Another Concordat ship disappeared, its death throes echoing across multiple dimensions. The Weavers were pressing their advantage, their impossible forms spreading across the battlefield like a cancer in reality itself. Admiral, Elena's voice was tight with tension. We're detecting a power buildup in the largest Weaver construct. They're attempting to replicate our stellar matter conversion technology. If they succeed, they'll be able to consume entire star systems in moments. Chen finished. She stood from her command chair, her decision made. Divert all power to the main weapon, including life support. Admiral, that level of power could destroy everything. Chen nodded. But if we don't stop them here, they'll consume the entire galaxy. Sometimes victory requires the courage to take impossible risks. She opened a channel to the entire fleet. All ships, this is Admiral Chen. Fall back to maximum safe distance. The Prometheus is about to attempt something that's either going to save us all or create a very interesting new astronomical phenomenon. The bridge crew worked with grim determination as power built in the ship's experimental systems. The hull groaned as reality itself began to bend around them. Through it all, Chen stood at the center of her bridge, watching as the Weavers approached their position. 10 seconds to critical mass, Elena reported. Admiral, it's been an honor. Chen allowed herself a small smile. The honor has been mine. All of you, human and alien alike, have proved that together we're capable of facing any challenge. She raised her voice. All hands, brace for dimensional displacement. Fire on my mark. The Weavers loomed closer, their impossible forms beginning to engulf the Prometheus in geometries that hurt the mind to perceive. The ship's power built to levels that shouldn't have been possible, the combined technologies of 6 species pushing the boundaries of what reality would allow. Chen's voice was steady as she gave her final order. Fire. Light bent. Space folded. Time itself seemed to hold its breath. When the Prometheus fired its main weapon, it didn't just release energy. It rewrote the laws of physics within its target zone. The combined power of 6 civilizations' greatest technological achievements, channeled through humanity's desperate gambit, created something entirely new. A cascade of controlled reality failure that matched the Weaver's dimensional manipulation and exceeded it. The weapon's effect started small, a pinprick of altered space no larger than a molecule. But it grew exponentially, fractal patterns of changed physics spreading outward like ripples in a cosmic pond. The Weaver's impossible geometries began to unravel as they encountered space that simply refused to operate by their rules. Aboard what remained of the Prometheus, Admiral Chen watched through failing sensors as reality reasserted itself. The ship's systems were barely functional. Its hull breached in a dozen dimensions, but the crew, human and alien alike, had survived. Status report, she managed, pulling herself up from where the final discharge had thrown her. Elena Santos, her uniform scorched but her spirit unbroken, checked her displays. The weapon. It worked. But not quite how we expected. We didn't just attack the Weavers. We changed the fundamental rules they were exploiting. They can't maintain their form in our space anymore. The Xi consciousness core, now barely a whisper of its former presence, pulsed with confirmation. Reality matrices are stabilizing. The Weavers' dimensional manipulation capabilities have been neutralized. They are retreating. Through the ship's quantum crystalline viewports, Chen watched as the impossible entities that had threatened all sapient life began to withdraw. Their fractal forms were simpler now, constrained by the new physics the Prometheus had created. Where they had been incomprehensible horrors, they now appeared almost beautiful, like complex mathematical equations given form. Admiral K. Ven's scaled hands moved across his sensor panel. The effect is spreading. The changed physics, it's creating a barrier through this entire sector of space. The Weavers won't be able to return. But there's something else, Elena added, her voice filled with wonder. The barrier, it's not just keeping them out. It's creating something new. The altered space is becoming accessible, comprehensible. We're receiving signals from the retreat Weavers. I think they're trying to communicate. Chen straightened her uniform, ignoring the pain from her injuries. Put it through. The message that came through wasn't in words or images, but in pure mathematics, in patterns of reality itself. The Xi consciousness core translated. You have changed us, changed space, changed the rules. We understand now. We see. We were blind before, consuming without comprehension. Now we understand boundaries, limits, the beauty of finite space. We will go. We will learn. We will remember. Hours later, in the Concordette's emergency assembly chamber, representatives of every spacefaring species gathered to understand what had happened. The Prometheus's desperate gambit had done more than save them. It had fundamentally altered their understanding of reality itself. High Administrator Xental's crystalline form pulsed with patterns of deep contemplation. In seeking to destroy them, you gave them the gift of comprehension. In defending against their consumption of space, you taught them to appreciate its limitations. That wasn't exactly the plan, Chen admitted, now cleaned up but still bearing the marks of battle. We were trying to survive, to protect our worlds. But sometimes the best solutions come from understanding rather than destruction. A very human perspective, the Xi collective consciousness observed. To take an act of desperation and turn it into an act of creation. Our species would have sought perfect logical solutions. The Arthenians would have tried to adapt. The Kreks would have attempted to phase away the threat. But humans chose to change the rules themselves. Elena, working with a mixed team of human and alien scientists, was already studying the barrier effect. The changed physics aren't just keeping the Weavers out. They're offering us new possibilities, new ways of understanding space, time, and reality itself. We're seeing applications in everything from transportation to energy production to communication. Then perhaps, Chen suggested, this was humanity's real gift to the galaxy. Not our deception, not our technology, not even our victory, but our ability to turn an ending into a beginning. The chamber filled with murmurs of agreement, electromagnetic pulses of approval, and crystalline chimes of acceptance. The alliance formed in desperation had become something more, a true union of different species, different perspectives, different approaches to understanding reality itself. Years later, ships of all species would travel through the region of changed physics that came to be known as the Prometheus Barrier. They studied its properties, learned its rules, and used its unique characteristics to advance their civilizations in ways none had imagined possible. The Weavers, too, were occasionally detected on the barrier's far side, their once chaotic forms now expressing mathematical beauty rather than cosmic horror. And humanity, no longer hiding its capabilities, took its place among the stars not as conquerors or saviors, but as innovators and bridge builders. They had proved that their greatest strength wasn't in their technology or their deception, but in their ability to adapt, to take risks, and to find hope in the darkest moments. The galaxy had changed, reality had changed, and in facing extinction, all species had found something greater, a future they could build together.